So, 1986, I got invited to go to a church, a Methodist church in Livonia called Clarenceville. But there was a church of maybe around 400 people or so. And from just walking up the sidewalk, I already knew, something's different. What was different? Well, I saw men walking into church. That was different. I saw people carrying Bibles into church. That was different.
Welcome, everyone, to podcast number 261, Renew Your Mind. With us today, we have a small crew and a little bit of a new crew, but we have our senior pastor, Kevin Harbin, and we have our youth and family director, also praise band leader, Jordan Kettlewell, and myself, Dana Hall, as a moderator. Today, we have the new guy. I know you said the new guy. But we wanted to get to know Kevin, Pastor Kevin, a little bit better, and we want him to get to know us so he gets to ask us questions too.
Yeah. So buckle up for the interrogation.
Yep.
I feel the hot seat already.
I was going to read some of these questions that I'm going to pose to Pastor Kevin. They came to me after I read the write-up in our e-news that was several weeks ago, but I just wanted to start by reading that. So, Pastor Kevin served in the United Methodist Church for 26 years, but chose to be ordained in the Global Methodist denomination. His strengths are noticed in his relevant and biblical preaching style, the relational care and concern for people, and a warm and hospitable welcome to all. Kevin and Ellen have been married 35 plus years, have 6 adult children and 4 grandchildren. Pastor Kevin grew up in a religious environment, putting in his 60 minutes a week and believing that was enough. But in 1986, he was invited to attend a Methodist church and discovered there was so much more when he was introduced to a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that was a game changer to his religiosity. Thank you.
Big word.
Cannot talk today. Since then, nothing in his life has been the same, and though life gets hard at times, Kevin chooses to see a good God through it all because Jesus makes all the difference. One mantra you will hear Pastor Kevin say is God loves you right where you are, but he loves you too much to leave you there. And because he experienced this personally, he is passionate and intentional to share this truth with others. And it goes on to say Pastor Kevin is a visionary leader who loves to help the smaller church grow and the maintaining church thrive. Pastor Kevin's favorite Bible verse is John 10:10. Jesus says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that you may have life and to have it to the full." So good.
Well, I didn't write that, and I can only hope but to live into that.
I know. That's like...
I will offer just one minor correction. It's not even a correction. It's just an addition. We have 5 grandchildren now. And
congratulations.
We have 6 kids. My wife and I have been married 37 years, and 6 kids and 5... Did I say that right? 5 grandchildren. 3 with one of our kids, and then 1 each with 2 others, and so forth. But it's a good thing.
That's awesome. I want to ask how did you 6 kids? That's a lot of kids.
Well, sure. And that's a story all of its own because we raised 4 of them biologically. And when our youngest was around 15 or so, God just put it on our hearts to adopt. And I saw empty nest on my horizon. I could see it I saw it, and I wanted to claim it. And as many things happen in our family, the Lord seems to touch my wife first, who then introduces an idea of which I become resistant to. And then I realize I might be being more resistant to the Holy Spirit than I am to my wife. And then in time, can 2 walk together unless they agree? Well, we agreed. And then we adopted 2 children through the foster system in Michigan, through the Methodist Children's Home in Redford, Michigan.
Wow.
And that's a long story all on its own.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
They were 6 and 7 when we adopted them. They're 21 and 22 now. So time has gone by.
Yeah.
Are they sibling? I mean, were they?
Yeah, they're a
siblings?
sibling set.
Yeah.
When we adopted, we thought we want to make the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And when we researched where the biggest need was, it was in Black sibling sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so we pursued that. And Jalen and Sukanya are biological brother sister to one another, and joined our family together and became Harbins.
Oh man, that's awesome.
I can't believe they're in their 20s now. I remember meeting them shortly after the adoption.
Yeah.
And that, boy, time just flies.
Biological or adoptive, you blink and
yeah,
it's changed.
time is gone. So you've known Pastor Kevin that long?
A little bit. Pastor Kevin and I knew each other. We had met in path. I would call it more of acquaintance, really, for a lot of years. But Pastor Kevin's wife, Ellen, she and I worked at Bayshore Camp, Junior Music Camp, together every summer for, I forget how many years, several years.
Okay.
So Ellen and I knew each other pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And we would meet on Friday when you'd come for the musical.
Exactly.
So Ellen's musical and you're not, or you both are?
She is.
She is.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I am in isolated locations.
I've heard you singing. I'd say you're pretty musical.
Thank you. I'll just leave it there.
And I met Pastor Kevin, I guess it's been a couple years, but through the disaffiliation, I called him to ask some questions. So I knew you a little bit. But so after we read that whole intro that you did not write, the one thing that I wanted to ask was, what exactly happened in 1986 when you were invited to that Methodist church service?
Yeah. The unexpected. I'm getting the spirit bumps right now just remembering, because I can still remember walking in. I'm a single guy. I'm in my young 20s at that time. Church had always been a part of my life. You know, like it said, I didn't know I was putting in my 60. That was just the culture that was presented in that church. It was a church outside the Methodist denomination. I have a lot of thankfulness for my mom who took me to church and made that a part of our lives. I guess in our Wesleyan terms, we would have called that prevenient grace, the grace that goes before. And but the things that I learned without necessarily being taught were, well, I was baptized. That's good. And I go to church, and that's good. I was confirmed in the faith, whatever that meant. Sadly, my experience was I remember playing ping pong and eating pizza. I don't remember learning about the Christian faith. And so as a result, and just because of family lifestyles that I saw, we were German. Germans, well, there's a certain culture that Germans have. And so I lived that out. And so when I went to college, I lived out my beliefs. I was a part of a fraternity. Not much needs to be said there. I played the reindeer games that fraternity guys will do. I didn't know it was wrong. I can't say as though I really felt guilty about it, because it was consistent with, in a sense, what I believed. So 1986, I got invited to go to a church, a Methodist church in Livonia called Clarenceville. Not a city, just a school system. And but there was a church of maybe around 400 people or so. And from just walking up the sidewalk, I already knew, ooh, something's different. What was different? Well, I saw men walking into church. That was different. I saw people carrying Bibles into church. That was different. I got into the worship service, and this particular sanctuary was very unique. It was in a semicircle. And so different than like our sanctuary, which is front to back, you see the backs of people's heads. In this situation, you got to look across and watch people in church. And there was one particular couple. They would not stop smiling. They looked like they were really happy to be there. And I watched them for a period of weeks and months and years, and they never changed. And so I began to realize that church here is different. I began to learn that there is a difference between religiosity of being religious, which I would have said I was, and having a relationship with Jesus Christ. I just didn't know that verbiage then, but it was happening. And then when church got over, because I went to the early service, they said, let's go to Sunday school. And I'm like, Sunday school? I was confirmed. And I'm also a salesman at the time, so just show me the donuts. That's all I need. And they said, well, we have donuts. They're just in the Sunday school class. And I said, that's not fair. And so we went, and it was there that everybody opened their Bibles. And a woman was there who was older than us, and she was teaching us. And I didn't have a Bible, and yet they kept one there for me, and or for guests. And so I used it. But when she said turn to, they did. I didn't. And I was challenged for the first time in my life. I've gone to church my whole life, and I don't know how to navigate the Bible. Now, I was smart enough to know that there's tables of content. And so I put my Bible underneath the table so that nobody noticed I was looking at the table of contents. But here I was an outside sales manager in the telephone world. And I've been enlisted with a lot of responsibilities, people, monetary budgets, etc. And I'm feeling so incompetent. And it was challenging and yet awkwardly comfortable. And then a good friend bought me my first Bible, and I still have it today. And I started to read it. Did you know amazing things can happen if you just read the Bible? And in the world of coincidence or God's providence, I was living with some fraternity guys at that time in Southfield, Michigan. And but I just knew I need to separate. And so I did. And I was going through the church hallway, and I saw a bulletin board with a little index card on it saying, looking for somebody to watch our house while we're in Florida. And I thought, that's for me. Well, this is back in the 80s where televisions actually had dials on them, and or at least this home did, and it didn't have cable TV, and the rabbit ears weren't very good. So I just read and read and read. And the first sermon series that the pastor was on the Lord's Prayer. And I'd never heard a relevant message before that I can think of. They may have happened. Others might have thought, but they just weren't reaching me. And so what happened then was I'm listening to the series, and he gets to the part of forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And he linked to the reality that if we're not willing to forgive, then our forgiveness is in jeopardy. I didn't like that. Because I had one person in my life. That's a different day. I had one person in my life who I just had a hard time wanting to ever forgive. And yet I was being challenged in that moment. And that took me 6 months to work through. But in those 6 months, I'm reading the Bible. I'm engaged in Sunday school with others at my age, etc. And I came across Matthew 6:24. You can't have two masters. You can't, love both God and mammon. And I was a salesman back then. I loved money. I loved money more than God because that was my ticket. But I was challenged now with what I read. Then I got to 2 Peter. And somewhere in one of the chapters and verses, it says, better to have never known the truth than to know it and walk away from it. Yeah. And I was becoming aware now of the truth of Jesus, because at this church, people were asking me, how is it with Jesus? And I'm like, what's he got to do with this? And people would say things like, are you saved? And I'm like, what's that got to do with anything? I was baptized. I had confirmation. And so there was just so many challenges. I don't have a date. I don't have that Billy Graham moment when I was called to the altar. I have a season in my life where I just know that I know that I know that my heart turned, because I was like Saul, who then became Paul. And in his life, we saw just a radical shift. It wasn't progressive. It was immediate. And that's what took place in my life. Though I realize some people need that process or that progress. For me, it was immediate. But it was immediate because I needed to forgive somebody. And I needed to realize that this life that I was living Monday to Saturday with the fraternity guys and then coming to the church on Sunday, that was, I didn't know what hypocrisy was, but I was beginning to learn what it might mean. Mm-hmm. And then I just learned also what it meant to follow Jesus. So, wow, what a long answer. But you started with that question.
Well, I started with a good one. So that's just kind of what popped out.
Well, I'm in my 60s now, and it's a wonderful thing for all of us to always go back to our beginnings. It's like in the book of Revelation where it says, remember your first love. Because my love for Jesus in that moment, I would like to say it this way. Yes, we all have valleys. We have the ups and the downs of life. But I'm as excited and passionate about my love for him today as I was then. If not, how do you say more so? But yeah, more so.
Well, what struck me, you said you were awkwardly comfortable in that Sunday school room. Mm-hmm. Was it because of the people around you trying to teach you, or?
Well, sure. It's moments like this, where yes, there was a teacher and she was teaching things that was way over my head, but they were also applying what they learned. Now, here I am in my mid-20s. I'm applying what I learned. But it was a life different than what I was watching these people apply. Mm-hmm. So as they went through the scriptures, they're applying what they were just taught. And I, frankly, I just never been in a situation where we dialogued about such things. Mm-hmm. Just talk to me, let it go in my ears, out my ears, but make me have to wrestle by responding to a question.
Yeah.
That's where it's supposed to be. Yeah. But that was new. And when you don't have an answer, it's uncomfortable. But I had to start looking at the lives that these people at this church were living. Mm-hmm. And frankly, they did have what I wanted. I went to bed with certain regrets on my mind. I went to bed waking up the next day, not necessarily always remembering what I did the day before. And so there was a lot of things that, let's just say, God was speaking to me about, even if the people weren't. Yeah. And it was good. It was good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad I asked that question first. So, Jordan, do you have any questions that you want to ask?
Well, I mean, I know you've got a whole list. I mean, just fire away. I'll jump in. Okay. I'll jump in where my curiosity peaks, which it was going to, but that was so comprehensive. That was a well-rounded account.
Well, by the way, I never mentioned my wife Ellen in the midst of all of this.
That was going to be my question.
Because we did meet that. If I started going to that church in the spring of '86, I met her in the summer of '86. I was on the church softball team, and she was a student out of state returning home, and so she came to the game. And even though the church was large, everybody on that team, they were her brothers, more like her brothers than they were ever a dating, possibility. And so when she noticed that there was some new blood on third base, she's like, okay, so who's that guy? And but the problem is, I wasn't ready for her. And even though we did have a date, what I learned about Ellen was she was a good Christian girl. Mm-hmm. And at that time in my life, I still wasn't necessarily looking for a good Christian girl. And so the Lord did what the Lord needed to do, and he separated us for a period of months. Longer story on that. But then while we were apart, God got my life in order. I committed to him. And she had some things that she needed to work through too. Of course, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. But while she was away, she worked on those things. And then we had one of those coincidental meetings, at church. And it was all of a sudden in that moment, I basically looked at her and I said, I'm going to marry that girl because she's a good Christian girl. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how God changes our passions on the inside. Yeah. What was important before now is non-existent. And now what is important is before me. And so he gave me eyes to see, and I saw her, and it was good.
I think that's so interesting, because I've been talking to my nephew, who is in his 20s right now, and he's going through the same thing, trying to meet, he wants to meet a good Christian girl. And he's had these conversations great conversations, but then the girl says, "Oh, I don't want to continue this." And he asked the question, "Am I too much for these women right now?" It's because of, he loves and lives for Jesus, and he had that turnaround the last 6 months. So, but anyway,
and that's one of those things I think, like, maybe so, he might be on the money, but not in a way that he needs to adjust what he's doing. Like, like with your story and with you and Ellen, there's the whole idea of being unequally yoked, which I'm not ever prone to using overly churchy terms, but that one really applies. And honestly, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing,
because it helps you to kind of weed through that person might not be ready for that kind of a relationship yet, where it's not a relationship between a guy and a girl. It's a relationship between a guy and a girl and Christ. Like there's 3 parts in that, and not everybody's prepared for that.
Right.
Well, and maybe one day a future podcast might be on integrity. And
yes.
And so for him now, all of a sudden, the integrity is I have my standards and my values, and I want to be yoked. I want to be partnered with somebody who does it. But in the world of love, and I don't want to be alone, I want a companion, etc., the challenge is to resist the temptation to settle for anything less than what our standards are.
Yeah.
Well, I'm learning a lot about podcasts. My first one, and much like anything else, like when I preach on a given Sunday, I think it's going to last this long, and then all of a sudden it lasts a little bit longer, and I talked with more words than I expected. Maybe that's already happening here.
That's what happens. So I think on that note, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll come back next week, and we'll learn a little bit more about Pastor Kevin. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We come to you from the Gaylord Methodist Church. We have 2 services on Sunday. We have a 9 a.m. traditional, and we have a 10:45 contemporary. We'd love to have you join us in person, but if you can't, we also are on Facebook and YouTube, so you can view us there. We are located at 215 South Center Street in Gaylord, Michigan. If you have any questions, you can Google us or call the office at 989-732-5380. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.